Well, welcome to one more episode of Dojo Live, connecting experts like you. And for today's conversation, I this is something new because I'd like to welcome a new teammate to the roster of awesome collaborators at Nearsoft, my fellow teammate in our Chihuahua office, Priscilla Solis. Priscilla, welcome to the show and welcome to the team. It's good to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here as well.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, Priscilla. So we look forward to having you more often. And of course, as ever, we have Tulio Siragusa, my fellow teammate, who's having a great time over there at Focusrite in LA. And Tulio, how you doing? It's good to have you here too as well, as ever.
Hey, good afternoon. A little different today. I'm
Yeah,
here live with our guest in person, in the flesh.
we look forward to this conversation. I mean, this is awesome. Great. And okay, and last but not least, I would like to introduce today's guest, Mr. Norm Rose. He is the president of Travel Tech Consulting, a company focusing on emerging technologies and how they impact global travel. So this should be interesting. Norm, it's a pleasure to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, Norm. Okay. Well, before we go into detail in the conversation, Norm, two things. I would like to ask you, tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, your background, and then, of course, tell us about Travel Tech Consulting. And then we'll move on to today's chosen topic of the day. Welcome to the show, Norm.
So I've been in the travel industry since 1982. I began my career at United Airlines, where I was in sales and marketing. Then I moved over as a corporate buyer to Sun Microsystems. But when I was at Sun, which was a very much an internet pioneer in the late 80s, early 90s, they were deploying what we commonly think about it as intranets or the internet way before that. And so I ended up getting involved with some sales activities, with some products, and we ended up being a very early customer of one of the first online booking tools for corporations. And so when I left in 1995, I kind of had a choice of careers. Do I want to stay at Sun, in which case I'd probably move away from travel, get more into procurement, or did I want to try to do something specific around what I have passion is, which is travel technology? And just to be clear on what I mean by that, it's both the kind of the consumer grade things that people think about, an app for travel or any type of interface for travel, but it's really more about the underlying infrastructure that runs the travel industry and understanding how new technology is disruptive in that sense. And so I founded the company in 95 with this goal to help the industry track emerging tech. And the way that's really materialized is I have done a number of different reports and analysis and research on every type of topic you think about in kind of the emerging tech role. And then sometimes I've been an evangelist, such as in the mid 2000s or the late 2000s, like 2008, excuse me, where we had the iPhone introduced. And I was talking about the impact of mobile way before people were talking about it. I've been talking about blockchain. So I'm kind of the guy out there talking about what's coming next. More practically, we have to make money as a company, and I'm pretty much a single person company. But what I've done is I've combined with kind of a network of senior analysts, and so I have a number of folks who work for me full time for various sectors. And we are across all sectors. So we work with airlines and hoteliers and distribution platforms and tour operators and corporate travel. And we're also a government contractor. So we help the GSA with the federal employee travel strategy around technology and around kind of best practices. So it's been great. I mean, the other association I have is this very conference right here, which is Focusrite.
Right, right.
I'm a subcontractor with Focusrite and have been since around 2000 and I think 2002, 2003. Focusrite is more of a traditional research firm, along with having conferences. But in the context of research, I write a lot of their emerging tech articles for the Innovation Edition, which is a subscription service they offer for research, as well as do projects under their name sometimes as well, or speaking. I'll be doing two panels, one today and one tomorrow today on corporate travel, tomorrow on airline distribution. So It's been a great relationship. Last thing about my relationship with Focusrite is I've been kind of a key member of the team since the founding of the Fast Pitch competition, which we call the innovation platform or the summit. And so I have, through Focusrite and through some other ways, have worked with startups. I see about 200 to 250 startups a year. And my role with Focusrite is one of a screener and also a person who preps the people going on stage. So if you like the presentations, if they seem polished, there's a lot of work behind the scenes to get there.
I can imagine.
In grabbing this amazing boardroom we're sitting in, we just kind of grabbed it. So if someone comes in, kicks us out just before one, we might be doing one of those on-the-run interviews.
Yes, it should be.
Oh, well, we can do it while you're driving, just like we did with Pedro, right? Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Norm, for elaborating on your background and what keeps you up at night. Now, can you well, I understand that now moving into today's chosen topic, I understand we're going to be talking about how emerging technology is changing the way we plan, search, buy, and experience travel, right? So tell us about that, please, and tell us why you chose this particular topic.
Well, I think that there's a balance that happens with any type of emerging technology. And outside the travel industry, what happens is we have hype. Inside the travel industry, we have hype. The problem is with our hype inside the travel industry, we're generally at a lag. So the industry already, the general tech has already kind of researched different items, and then it comes to travel. And so I kind of play a role of being in that gap right now. So I'm both an evangelist for new technology and a skeptic when it comes to whether it's really going to have the impact that is being stated. So case in point, we'll start with a very common thing that we hear from startups and we hear from companies, personalization. Everything has to be personalized. We've heard it on stage a few times. In reality, if you're a leisure traveler, you're probably traveling maybe 1 or 2 times a year. You may have your family, total family with one trip. You could just have your spouse for the other trip. And even within the trip itself, you could have a different persona on what's happening on that trip. You're going to a family event, you're going to a vacation, and therefore the infrequency of that leisure traveler promotes a real problem on doing something personalized. The business traveler seems logical, but there's a lot of different personas a business traveler could have. So just case in point, when you hear the subject of personalization, and it is so overhyped and so pushed, almost everyone mentions it, that and AI and some other things. What really I try to get down to is what is it really going to look like? Because will you know that I am in this certain persona on this certain segment, or you're actually kind of doing a micro segment of what I am like versus other people? I think that's where the misunderstanding of this stuff happens. But it gets so hyped, and then we get traditional Gartner drop off on the technology adoption curve, if you're familiar with that chart, where there's lots of hype, and then it drops down to the trough of disillusionment, which means everyone thinks nothing's going to happen with that. And so we've seen, I would say blockchain is kind of there. Blockchain was overhyped, then it has come down, and now it's starting to show some value. VR, AR, voice. I mean, all these different things that we can talk about individually have their own profile and could potentially something like blockchain change the very infrastructure of travel. But it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be immediate. It's going to be more of an evolutionary activity. So we can drill down on any of those technologies you would like, but I just want to kind of give you that perspective that that gap that exists in general tech is even bigger here with travel tech. Even though everyone thinks with the online travel agencies we're very advanced with technology, we become very complacent very quickly. People call the online travel agencies the legacy companies now.
Right. So I'm curious, in the past, I would say, 10 years, maybe even 20 years, but more the past 10 years, there's been huge leaps in terms of adoption of technology in travel. What would you say if you had to pick 2 or 3 of the major things that have been introduced historically speaking, what have they been and what impact have they had, both
Okay.
for companies as well as the individual consumer traveler?
So we can start with the internet itself. And unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember talking to people about the internet and the fact they did not understand. And that includes my brother, who may see this video at some point. When I
Carlos and I are old enough for that too.
yeah, I was talking
Absolutely.
the internet's going to, and he was an AOL guy. And I was saying, well, no, this is the internet. It's going to be. He couldn't get it. Now he works for a big consulting firm. And he actually sells some of their emerging technology services. I think he's come up to speed. But the point I'm making is that I guess if I were to say the internet itself, what it's done is it's given direct access to customers. So, before, if you want to talk to someone at United Airlines, you talk to someone at United Airlines, you pick up the phone, talk to them. But in reality now, going on an airline.com site or an OTA site, I mean, people interact and do a self-service model. Now, that being said, that can even be disputed at some level. Because have we simply made some other entity, either the leisure traveler or the business traveler or even their assistant, into a travel agent? Because we've pushed out self-service, but is that taking up time that, from other things because it's complex? It's a funny thing about even the internet itself.
It's funny, I forget who it was, but essentially what self-service has done with the internet is turned every consumer into an employee.
That's right.
And so we've replaced the travel agency with self-agency.
Well, not really. And so what really happened is that the OTAs, who start out as being, you don't need a travel agent, we're an online travel, have become more like travel agencies over time. They have a lot of support staff. And the more progressive travel agencies in all different sectors have tried to become more, online oriented, but there's still a lag. And so there's still, if you think about it, if you go to a traditional travel agent, which is over 50% of travel is booked by traditional travel agents, how do they interact with you during all those phases you mentioned earlier as far as search, buy? And it's disjointed.
Right.
Are they on a shared screen like we have here and we collaborate? Very few do. It's more via telephone, via email, sending PDF files back and forth. So we still, even in the traditional travel space, haven't fully gone to take advantage of technology that could accelerate that.
So in reality, would you say that we've basically just entered the digitization of travel, but it's just replicated what used to be done manually with computers?
You're absolutely right. And if you think about even the GDS platforms, which are still powering most of travel, the way you shop is dictated by the way the API that they programmed against with the GDS allows you to get commands. So you're restricted by the underlying technology. And that's why I was saying the underlying platforms haven't changed yet, but I'm optimistic that we're going to see some change pretty quickly.
Okay, so like in the evolution of any technology, so as consumers, we've gotten used to this, but we want more, right? Because we're judging our experience on things like, shopping on Amazon.com or Netflix, where there's machine learning and intelligence that recommends things. So is that next? What's next in terms of taking it to something that actually adds more value instead of just making it simple to book a travel?
So let's just talk about leisure travel. So and compare that to Netflix. So Netflix, how many movies have you watched on Netflix? The amount of data that they have on you is able to deliver that. If you don't have enough data on the customer and it's not integrated in the travel, it's very hard to have a Netscape experience. But that's been the theme of everything. There's something called the new distribution capability. Are you familiar with that? It's a standard promoted by IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association. It's an XML standard. Oh, wow, it's XML. Exciting, right? Especially for the tech audiences. Wow, it's 2018, and we're doing XML in travel. But in reality, it's replacing something even more archaic, which is EDIFACT. That's the kind of the UN protocol for communicating between the airlines and other systems. So, they're really archaic. The big three GDSs have had to move off of mainframe computers that has operating systems that go back to the 60s.
It's kind of funny. It's like following the retail evolution, right? With EDI and so interesting.
Well, the other thing I would say though, because your original question was about what is changing, and it really is this, right? This is the biggest change agent in the travel industry, and I'm sorry to say, not everyone has caught up with that mobile reality. People depend on their mobile, and they depend on it very strongly when they travel. They're depending upon it to shop, to inquire, to understand, and to gather information. And so that is a 10-year-old issue. You've got, I'll put it this way. In one of the segments, which is the business travel segment, I was interviewed by a press company, media company, and they asked me to comment on the fact that these travel management companies, which are the corporate travel agencies, how are they introducing booking an airline on their app? I'm like, what? What? Why is that news? that should have been that part of the, but they hadn't had booking on their app. So depending on the sector and depending on how they've viewed it, people are not thinking about mobile as a complete shift of platform. They think of it as a touch point. And that's really a mistake. I think that mobile is at the center of everything, which means the traveler is at the center of everything, which is different than we used to be. You know? It's a very funny joke that the father of deregulation, Alfred Kahn, he was in the Carter administration. He was the father of deregulation. And he basically was defining what yield management is. And he said, from an airline perspective, yield management is you yield to my management. And that's how the travel industry has worked for decades. The airlines drive a lot of the kind of the thought leadership. They drive a lot of the means to the end. You can't have a tours and activities sector if you don't have an airline sector. You don't really have, you have hotels that can be driven to and stay, but the type of hotels that accommodate air travel passengers wouldn't exist without the air travel. And so they really tend to be the some of the innovators. And then since we've had the internet, I mean, you've got consolidation of 3 large online travel companies, Expedia, Priceline, or Booking, it's called now, and Ctrip. And they've acquired a lot of secondary companies. They've acquired meta-search companies. So you have, I'm sure that's similar in all different industries. You have a lot of consolidation, big guys buying up the small guys. And whether that yields innovation, we'll have to see.
Although I think what's different though about other industries, like if they don't sell their inventory today, they still have that inventory tomorrow. In the travel space, you don't sell the inventory today, you lost revenue. So what's being done to address that and to create more value so that there's a better way to manage that? Are there some companies doing better than others? Or,
well, I mean, I think that we've had various types of channel management software introduced. So hotels use the channel management software to dictate how much of their inventory goes to different sources. If they use the analytics associated with that software to see where their sales are coming from. So there is a little bit more strategy around where I need to do things. Now, that being said, the hotel industry itself is highly fragmented. So it was Bill Gurley on the stage this morning, and he's a very famous investor and Silicon Valley icon. And he basically said, I have one thing to say about the hotel industry. And he started complaining about the lack of smart room capabilities, which if you were to read the travel press, you would think is already there.
Right.
Because I expected Alexa in my room. Where is it? I expected to have a smartphone app that I can close the blinds. So that gap also presents problems.
Okay, so the internet's been a change agent. It's been a driving force for progress. What would you say are some of the hindering forces from getting to? Well, first of all, what is the next thing? Like, what is ultimately the goal? Where's it going?
Well,
is there a plan to get somewhere? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the emerging technologies, whether it's around natural language processing or whether it's about machine learning or deep learning, all these things are being put in behind the scenes in order to improve things, trying to get more accurate, everything from accurate ad targeting to accurate quotes. And I started to talk about the NDC effort. And that is, as I said, an XML standard, but it is also trying to allow the airlines to become retailers, like you were saying with Amazon, so they could ultimately get a request and provide a quote that contains unique ancillaries for you as a customer, along with maybe even unique prices. And so we're trying to get to the one-to-one marketing thing. It's probably going to be more segment oriented. So you kind of fit in this micro segment. So let's try that. So I think a lot of the emerging technologies are here and are changing. The next big thing, again, is not going to come with a bang. It's going to just be a slow crawl. And I think personally, and I have a stake in the game here. I'm an advisor for a company called Winding Tree, which I think you had an interview with Pedro.
Yes.
Who's
Right.
the COO. And so I'm on the board. I'm an advisor, and it's going to be a slow slog in order to get the type of platform on a blockchain that can actually be that responsive and fast as it has to be, as we have with these current systems. But what's going to happen? There's going to be a distributed layer that not necessarily is a distributed ledger, because a blockchain is a distributed ledger. So there's going to be transactions happening on top, and then it's going to be recorded on the blockchain. And the value of doing that is that you have a single source of truth around that record. And there's an opportunity to perhaps reduce costs through faster and lower settlement costs, emission tracking. There's a whole bunch of things that can be done with blockchain once it's in place. So I think that's going to change things. So it's going to take another 2 or 3 years until we see even the evidence. And like full-blown change is going to take, probably more than 5 years, maybe as long as 10 years. So we have a kind of a revolution.
Are you finding companies open to that evolution, or is there still resistance around emerging technology?
So we had we had a major, well, as far as blockchain, there's a lot of skepticism, and so I guess the best way to state it is that if the pitch around blockchain is eliminating the middleman, so that you no longer have the costs associated with that middleman, that's not easily done. That's a nice kind of pitch to talk about and an ultimate goal, but peeling away certain middlemen that don't add value where a blockchain implementation would be faster is great. If it's a private blockchain, which means we had a speech by someone from IBM this morning talking about this, and they have a private blockchain. It's not really eliminating the middleman. It's just putting the middleman on a different platform, and they still control who gets invited to participate in the blockchain and how different records get authenticated and so forth. Versus what Winding Tree trying to do is this whole open system where the consensus is done by the open network. So there isn't one person or one entity that validates I have something to sell, you have something to buy, we need to transact. It is distributed. There's issues with that too. I mean, there's a concentration of these miners using a lot of energy to do this. So what it reminds me of is the internet in the early days. You guys seem to have been around long enough to remember that. I was telling you a story about my brother or other people I talked to. Remember, I talked to a traditional travel agent, and the internet's never going to do anything in my business. He actually said that to me. And then I caught him a little bit later. It was the owner looking up on the computer stock prices. What are you using to check that? Oh, that's the internet. And how did you do it before? Yeah. So it's there is always resistance to change. So I started to say also beyond blockchain, just dynamics. It was a pretty big announcement this morning, where one of the 3 GDSs, Sabre, is acquiring Fairlogics, which is basically the leading platform to bypass the GDS. Now, it's not as simple as that. There are weaknesses that Fairlogics wasn't able to overcome, such as controlling the agent desktop. But it's also a sign that the new CEO of Sabre is a different type of person. He's trying to blow apart the organization and reinvent himself.
That's a huge shift from Sabre I remember.
Oh, yes.
Tom Caleb was like the chairman. It was like green lines on the screen back then.
Yeah. One of the things that I asked them when I was on a prep call with them is this the line between systems that basically was dissolved by Sean Menke, who's the CEO. And what I mean is they have a business that's called GDS, which is basically for the travel agents to have a platform to sell airline tickets and others. And they have a PSS system, which is a passenger service system, which is simply their airline reservation system that they basically host airlines. And there was a hard line, a hard wall between those two areas. And what was frustrating about that from just an objective view is if we're trying to move this level of personalization everyone wants to do and become a retailer, you need more information about the customer. That other side of the fence had a lot of information about the customer. Yeah. Now, I don't think it's proper to bring that information specific due to PII and GDRP and so forth, but getting at least some trend information, segment information from that side of the business into the passenger service system is going to be a way that the airlines are actually going to execute more of that.
Hey, Tulio.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that
Favors the bold. Okay.
So, what was that?
What do you got there? Oh, is it time?
It's time, yeah. I'm sure there's lots of questions.
Chatbot's makes noises.
Yeah, exactly.
It's evolved.
Yeah, it's evolving. This is our chatbot 2.0. Okay, so for the record, okay. So here's the thing. I think that Tulio, you ready for this? How do you want to do this, Tulio?
I'll have Norm press the button today.
Please do.
Just press this here.
Right, and that's it.
It's the easy button. It's a chat button.
Yeah. Actually,
it's chat button. There you go. Whoa. Here we go.
Okay. Cool.
This is high-tech stuff.
Super high-tech.
Ready?
Okay.
Okay. Folks, if you have questions for Norm Rose about today's chosen topic, okay, just make sure that you send them over right here. And this, by the way, this is our state-of-the-art chatbot. We created the UX for this, and Tulio coded it. Norm today had the opportunity to activate it remotely from Los Angeles, okay? So just send them over. This is, by the way, our chatbot is fully Twitter integrated. It's integrates fully with Twitter. Yeah, it's right here. Just go to Twitter. You know how to use Twitter, right? So here you go. Just go to Dojo Live.
Yeah.
Okay. And send us your questions for Norm, and we'll just read them here, right? And he can respond live here on the spot. Okay. So
Carlos, we're about to get kicked out of this boardroom, and the good news is we're almost done in time. The time is flying. So maybe we can just ask one or two more questions, and anything come in that we want to ask Norm.
But before, we need to deactivate the chatbot.
Okay, let me deactivate it. Here we go. Boom. We're on a speedy deactivation.
There, it's deactivated now.
All right. Anything come up? Otherwise, we can ask some wrap-up questions.
Well, Priscilla, do you have any questions for Norm about today's chosen topic, emerging technologies in travel?
Yeah, I have one question. You mentioned there's sort of an skepticism from the travel industry with these hype technologies and what's new. And how do you see that the people respond to change, like to these new technologies? Are the customers more open to these, or are they skeptical as well?
Well, it depends on how you define customer. Are you talking about the traveler as the customer, or
yeah, the traveler?
Mm-hmm. The traveler is ahead of the rest of the industry. The traveler already has a powerful computer in their pocket. They may know more than the gate agent when the flight's delayed. I mean, they're ahead of the game. So that is something the rest of the industry is trying to catch up on. In general, kind of resistant to change. This is not an industry that quickly embraces change. I mean, very frankly, you've got the booking holdings company and Expedia and Ctrip. That could have been American Express if they had wanted to way back when, but they didn't see the opportunity. And we're constantly going to have new companies emerge because of that kind of lag and understanding where tech is going to drive change.
Yeah, I think they missed the boat on that one for sure.
Yeah.
So, words of wisdom. Companies that are watching, that are in the travel tech space, it sounds like the future favors the bold. What are some bold moves that you would recommend that would really be of benefit not only to them long term, but also to the consumer? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share as we wrap up?
Yeah, there's a couple of points here. So number one is you need to experiment. We need to get into a sandbox and see what blockchain is and see how it relates. You need to investigate and understand the actual business benefits of AI, not just the buzz about that. So everything should be taken from a kind of a practical viewpoint. And I think the most important thing is don't take my word saying that blockchain is hot or that AI is already changing the industry. Everyone needs to do their homework. They need to investigate that, and they need to get away from the hype cycle that it's going to be, replacing human beings because it's so intelligent. To well, what can it do now? So an actual chatbot, for instance, is not so intelligent it can make a full airline reservation, unless it's simple, but it can ward off calls to the call center, whether it's airline or TMC or agency or tour operator, because easy questions get answered. So those types of things, those opportunities are here today. So don't get glassy-eyed over some term and some hype. Try to figure out how it really applies to your business.
Sounds like being pragmatic never goes out of style. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. We managed to stay in here without getting kicked out. But our time's up. Carlos, back to you.
Well, the only thing left for me to do is, Norm, just send you a heartfelt, warm thank you. As warm as it can be, because it's freezing out here. Here in Mexico City, it's freezing, almost zero. But other than that, thank you for being here, having been with us today. And we're gonna be in touch. Well, Tulio is gonna be talking to you some other time. And of course, just two things before we go is that next week I'm training my new chatbot for next week, Tulio, just so that you know. Okay, so it's a canine robot. Okay. So this little fella is going to be fully activated, fully integrated with Twitter as well. That's for next week. Okay, but
just don't overfeed him.
No, not at all. No, it's just actually once you plug him in, you'll see everything he does. See that this is actually a robot,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's, so anyway.
What's today?
Okay. Well, before we go, just one thing real quick. I know they're going to kick you out of the room, but I just want to mention that next week we're going to be speaking with, let's see, here on Dojo Live, Wednesday, same time. We're going to be speaking with Justin Gordon, CEO of Shaka Code, straight from Hawaii. So Tulio, you know who he is, right? So anyway, just stay tuned for that, folks. We don't have the topic yet, so I cannot tell you what it is, but we'll have it soon. So go to the website, dojo.nearself.com, and it'll be right there in no time. And with that being said, Norm, thank you again. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Tulio. And goodbye, folks. Stay tuned for more Dojo Live, connecting experts like you. Have a great day, folks. Bye-bye.